So I like it when those things work out. And Craig, at least for here, us locally, an interesting story in Big 12 wise, Kansas is expected to hire former Baylor and BYU offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes as their new offensive coordinator. They are a wide zone that's a little bit different than Baylor, I guess, a little in how it runs, but they're based out of the wide zone. Lance Leipold's always been kind of that guy. Now he brings Jeff Grimes to Kansas to replace Andy Kotelnicki, who's on his way to Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations to Jeff Grimes, first of all, and welcome in, everybody. What's up to the chat, and we appreciate you being a part of the show. I feel actually coherent today, so it's a step forward. I was telling these guys, like, I should not have been here yesterday. Got bugs going around, but I'm good to go today. Glad to be here, and glad that we have some fun things to talk about. But with Jeff Grimes, I think it's a great hire. I think it's a great hire for Kansas. I think that he fits what they do pretty well, that they have proven that they've got some, O-linemen and some running backs. And I think most of all, you look at the quarterback situation going into next year with Jalen Daniels coming back, and what can really set off that wide zone and make it pop even bigger is having a elusive dual threat, playmaker there pulling the trigger for you. So I think that this is a very interesting hire because I wasn't expecting him to remain in the Big 12 per se. I thought that, maybe he'd, venture off just to somewhere else for a year or two. There for a little bit, it was rumored that, maybe he was going to get some action with like the UTEP job, and then his name got pulled out of that. But didn't really know what the next chapter was going to hold for Jeff Grimes, and sure enough, he's going to be in the Big 12. So good for him. But I think that with what they do, as you mentioned, and with just the personnel that they have and that they'll be able to have for him next year, it's understandable when you go, the guy from Baylor, like, didn't they just have like a bad couple of seasons? Yes, they did. Weren't they pretty bad on offense? Yes, they were. His time had run dry here. I thought it was time for a change of scenery. The offense just got dull. They didn't have the linemen to run the offense the way that they needed to. They had running backs that didn't fit, that were among your best players, which, I mean, what is that? You had your quarterback constantly getting banged up. And so, it just wasn't working well here. And in general, Dave Aranda had to do something, and that was the logical move to make. But for Kansas, you're on a good run. Is he going to be Andy Kotelnicki? No. He's not going to be like that dynamic, running up the charts type of play caller. But he's going to be very effective. And I think, like I said, with the personnel they have, the style they have, with the head coach that they have, I think he's going to be very successful there. I don't want to predict that they're just going to run through the Big 12 now, but I think that that's a very solid hire. And I think in the new look Big 12, where everybody's going to be basically on par with one another, there's no more looking up, and there's two teams who have been swimming with 5 stars and high 4 stars for the bulk of their recruiting classes, and everybody else is like maybe getting a few of those guys, but mostly not. It's going to be much more of an even playing field, and I think the wide zone is unique. I think that was part of what made it pretty cool for Baylor to have. But I saw one of those comments, after the hire of Jake Spavital, of like, well, they're not that unique anymore because they're just running the spread like everybody else. And I do think there is some merit to that, whereas the wide zone was something that, had you been able to maintain your offensive line and had you been able to maintain just sort of the status quo on that side of the ball, you would have been different from everybody else, and you would have had some sort of a trick up your sleeve. But now Kansas will be even more unique in that way, and that'll present a problem for teams needing to defend them. So I think it's a good move for the Jayhawks.
Yeah, and look, the problem here, I don't know, like, the only problem I think Jeff Grimes had was that he did not adjust the scheme to the talent until they'd already kind of let the wall fall down, so to speak, before they started to patch it. Like, the hole was already there. Like, it was kind of over. And, because they brought him in to run the wide zone, he kept trying to run that, but they didn't have the linemen that they used to. And they didn't realize that soon enough. Like, the rest of the world kind of did, and they thought, well, they'll get it. We'll move them around. We'll shuffle the line and they'll get it. And it just wasn't ever that. So now that they move on and they're going to recruit you. Also, you kind of have to deal with the recruiting realities of your situation. Like, can you get wide zone linemen easier where you are, or can you get spread linemen where you are? So if they can get spread linemen here, that's I think the best thing, and that's the position they really have to enforce. It was the weakest spot on the team this year, the offensive line, by a long shot. So if they do that, they'll be fine. But in the spread, they didn't have the guys to run that offense anymore.
I mean, the spread's all over the state of Texas. So,
Yeah.
pretty much every lineman growing up here has run the spread at some point or another at this stage. And if not, maybe they're in unique little communities, but it's not like a drastically different, uphill learning curve to try and figure that out. I think it does take some of the pressure off the offensive line as opposed to what you need to be able to do running the wide zone. But Kansas runs the wide zone, so it's not much of a change for them in the long haul or the short term. It's just, kind of staying in the vicinity that you've already been in and just adding a guy who's got a lot of experience running that type of offense. And I think that, it's a great move. It's a great fit. I wasn't thinking about that really when the KU OC job came open or when Jeff Grimes became a free agent, but seems to fit really well to me and at first glance, and I think that'll be a great little partnership with Leipold and Grimes moving forward, and that's a fun thing to look forward to if you're a Jayhawks fan next season, is that your offense is going to be in pretty good hands. And I mean, you already feel confident with Leipold being your head coach, but yeah, this isn't going to be too much of a drastic difference for them. And I'm glad to see Jeff Grimes land on his feet. So he'll have his running backs and he'll have his offensive linemen that should be able to execute his offense, unlike what he had here the last couple of years. And Baylor will be able to move on to something a little bit more familiar here around the state of Texas, and something that they should be able to recruit a little bit better to in a quicker amount of time. Because that's the thing with the Randa and everything Baylor related, they're on a clock. That's the thing. This isn't a building process. This is you have to win next season. You have to show substantial improvement next season. There is no if and but about the situation. It's now or never for Dave Aranda, so they couldn't afford to, let's run it back with Jeff Grimes and let's hit the portal like every other school in America and try to find linemen like every other school in America. They don't have the time to do that. Administration, fans don't have the patience to sit through a couple years of a rebuild after you've been bad for a couple of years. So, it's a good fit for Jeff Grimes. It's a good fit for Lance Leipold and Kansas. And Baylor is looking elsewhere, and they'll, cross paths here. I haven't even looked at the schedule for next year. They play Kansas next year. I'm not even sure. I'll look it up.
Yeah, they play Kansas here, but their Final Five